discover the incredible condition that transformed her shocking millionaire marriage forever. Sarah Thompson had always believed in hard work and kindness, the ingredients for a bright future. Married to Mark, an accomplished tech entrepreneur, she thought she had cracked the code for happiness. Their suburban Chicago home, resplendent with dinner parties and laughter, was the ultimate picture of success. But all that began to fracture the day Sarah received her diagnosis, a rare autoimmune disorder that rewrote the very script of her life. As her health declined, Sarah felt like a ghost at her own extravaganzas, struggling to climb the stairs to greet guests while they discussed their latest lavish vacations. The whirl of luxury cars and vacation homes felt more like a churning sea, tossing her between anxiety and inadequacy. Did her friends notice the tremors in her hands now? Did they see the deepening circles under her eyes, or the way her laughter occasionally hit a painful wince? Mark, once her unyielding support, transformed into a stranger through the prism of her illness. She sensed a shift invisible to everyone but her. He shielded his frustration with charming smiles, but when Sarah overheard him dismissing her health concerns over the phone, it was as if the floor had fallen from beneath her. "It's just stress," he said, brushing aside her condition as easily as he would a computer glitch in a startup. Panic seized her. Was their love merely a veneer over a foundation of idealized memories? Sarah knew she had to fight back. She reached into her nursing background and formed an online support group for those like her, battling chronic conditions in quiet despair. As the bright screens glowed with shared stories, she began to rediscover her spirit. When she shared her trials, a flicker of resilience ignited in her heart, something Mark hadn't seen in years. Still, it wasn't enough to quell the shadows lurking at the corner of her mind. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As their anniversary approached, the tension between them escalated. Subtle conversations became loaded with unspoken grievances while Sarah sat anchored in a whirlwind of guilt and betrayal. She was grateful for the compassion her friends offered, yet despised how her illness painted her identity now. How could she make Mark understand that she needed him to see her beyond the diagnosis? Sitting under the soft glow of twinkling lights, surrounded by their friends who laughed and toasted, Sarah felt her heart constrict. She had to confront Mark, but fear slithered up her spine. "Do you even love me anymore? Or is it just the idea of me?" The words burst forth, raw and unfiltered, catching them both off guard. His expression reflected agony, both her pain and the dangerous reality looming over them. The party continued, palpable joy encasing them, while they tiptoed around undiscussed emotions. This moment would either solidify their bond or expose a crack that ran deeper than either of them were prepared to confront. The pressure built between them, hesitant and charged. Were they destined to find a path back to understanding, or would they be swept away by the currents of uncertainty? The hollow laughter of their friends washed over Sarah like a chilling tide. Time slowed as she searched Mark's eyes, searching for a flicker of the connection they once shared, a reminder of love untarnished by her illness. Instead, she was met with an unsettling silence, as if the whole world dissolved in the weight of their unspoken truths. "Sarah," Mark finally spoke, his voice a whisper against the jubilant chaos around them. It wasn't a denial, nor a fervent declaration. It hung in the balance, unfinished. The sight of his hesitance ignited a fierce fury within her. "What do you want me to say? Am I not worthy of your love because I've changed?" She challenged, her voice rising above the clinks of champagne glasses. Eyes darted around their friends, the blank stares and disinterested expressions cutting deeper than any physical pain. Was this how it felt to be, so completely exposed yet utterly misunderstood? Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair, clearly flustered. "It's not that simple, and you know it. I'm scared, Sarah. We're both scared." "Scared of what?" The challenge hung like a storm cloud. "Because it seems like you're more scared of me than of anything else. Our love wasn't built on ease, was it? His lips tightened, betraying the storm of conflicting emotions behind his composed facade. "I just want you to be you again," he murmured, his voice cracking slightly. But Sarah wasn't entirely sure if she knew who she was anymore. In this moment of exposure, one thing became crystal clear. She couldn't afford to be a shadow of herself, neither for Mark nor anyone else. Igniting a beacon for the weary souls in her online support group taught her one thing. Resilience was born through vulnerability, as painful as it was liberating. The conversation turned raw and jagged, and with each exchange, Sarah began to reclaim pieces of herself that had been lost in worry and despair. "I am still here. I may be different, but I'm still me. And if you can't acknowledge that, then what are we doing?" Her voice trembled but grew steadier, her conviction blazing. Mark's eyes softened, but the hesitation still lingered. "I want to help, I just don't know how. Start by being honest with me. I need to know if I'm still enough." She pressed, feeling the weight of the moment intensify. As silence enveloped them again, a realization pierced through the fog of despair. This was not merely about her illness or Mark's frustration, it was an unfiltered examination of their relationship. They were two souls, both afraid of a future they didn't understand, tethered together by shared history and love now steeped in uncertainty. "Sarah, I want to support you, but it's hard to watch you struggle. I thought we were in this together," he admitted, vulnerability creeping through his words. "Then let us work on it together," she said, a stubborn determination igniting in her chest. "I want to promise that I can go back to who I was, but I can promise I'll face this head-on. But I need you by my side." As their friends clinked glasses, oblivious to the depth beneath the veneer of celebration, something shifted in the air between Sarah and Mark. They were standing at the precipice not of despair, but of a chance to redefine their love, grounded in honesty, amidst fear. In that charged moment of decision, uncertainty and hope collided, breathing life into a fragile new possibility. Perhaps they could emerge from this shadow together, not as two fractured individuals, but as a partnership anchored in understanding. But first, they had to confront the source of their fears, Mark's reluctance and Sarah's shifting identity. The conversation had sparked a new awareness in Sarah. It was time to take charge of her life, not just for herself, but for them both. Yet, as the reality of her health loomed larger than ever, a new thought began to crystallize. What if she could discover new strengths and talents through this struggle? Determined, Sarah traced an internal map towards personal empowerment. The path lay ahead, but it demanded she dive deeper into herself, as she ever had before, beyond the illness, beyond the fears. The moment to embrace unknown potentials was near, but in the tumultuous wake of their revelations, Sarah couldn't shake an unsettling feeling. What if there were more revelations lurking in the shadows? The time had come to face the deepest roots of both her struggles and Mark's fear, setting the course for an unforeseen confrontation, one that could either restore their bond or unravel entirely. The tension that hung in the air began to settle, and Sarah found herself retreating into her own thoughts, wrestling with the weight of this newfound commitment to her own growth. The reality had shifted. The burden of her illness, once an oppressive cloud, flickered with the possibility of transformation. While Mark turned his gaze away, as if contemplating his next words, Sarah's mind raced ahead. She reflected on the conversations she had led in her online support group discussions that didn't just comfort others, but provided her with insights into her own resilience. Each story, each battle against doubt, painted a unique portrait of strength ready to be seized. But what strength did she have beyond the narratives she crafted for others? The thought prickled at her like static electricity. Sometimes she felt like an imposter in her own life, played a role that didn't fit snugly against the contours of her reality. However, lurking within that discomfort was a whisper of ambition, urging her to uncover what lay beneath the facade she'd worn for so long. "Sarah?" Mark's voice cut through her reverie, pulling her back into the present moment. She focused her gaze on him, noticing the vulnerability etched around his brow. "Are you sure about this? I want to support you, but what if it gets complicated?" His words resonated with the fears she had yet to articulate. What if facing her illness head-on only unveiled deeper fractures in both herself and their relationship? But jeopardizing the connection they had, to slip back into silence, seemed far more daunting. Complicated is my middle name, she replied, a hint of humor edging into her tone. But seriously, I want to discover what I'm capable of. This is more than just about healing my body, it's also about healing my spirit. I need to know if I'm capable of more than just enduring. Mark nodded slowly, his expression gradually shifting from trepidation to support. I want to be there with you at every step. But I think we need to be open about what we're afraid of. Fear lurked like a shadow in their conversation, and she sensed the need to confront it directly. Okay, my biggest fear? That I'll be left behind in this journey. That I'll become someone you clock out of loving because you only remember the old me. What if I become so preoccupied with fighting this fight that I neglect our relationship? The tension held between them, thick and palpable, echoed the doubts that danced around their shared space. Mark's silence suggested a deeper contemplation was brewing within him. I'm afraid of that too, he finally admitted, his vulnerability unearthing a soft, aching sincerity. I'm scared that I won't be enough to help you, enough to stay connected. Her heart swelled at the honesty of Mark's admission. Here they were, unearthing fears that had lain hidden for too long. This was the beginning of an important dialogue, a possibility for deeper understanding. Then let us make a pact, she proposed, an idea taking shape. Let us check in with each other regularly about our fears, our challenges, and how we're feeling. I promise I won't just disappear into my head, but I need you to be present too. No more pretending. A flicker of relief crossed Mark's face. I can do that, he replied, a shadow of a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. I think it'll help us both. Sarah sensed the mutual commitment forming, an ever-necessary foundation upon which they could rebuild. Yet, amid this hopeful exchange, another set of realizations sparked within her. Diving deeper into this journey meant unraveling the intricacies of her own strengths, something she hadn't expected to pursue in the midst of illness. The ideas sent jolts of energy through her, exciting but daunting. What hidden talents awaited discovery, dormant beneath the weight of her disease? What could she achieve not just beneath the label of patient, but also as Sarah the woman who could still give and create? As they spoke about setting goals small and manageable, she felt the first familiar flicker of excitement igniting in her chest. Perhaps it was time to explore passions she'd sidelined. Writing, painting, mentoring others on resilience. They invited her to reconstruct her identity beyond the contours of illness. But before she could voice her ambitions, a thought tugged at the back of her mind, a chilling reminder that not all fears stemmed from the condition itself, but from external whispers of failure and inadequacy she had absorbed along the way. A sudden spark of ambition bridged the gap between doubt and purpose, propelling her forward. Sarah nodded slightly, resolute in her silent vow. It was time to seek answers to her unspoken questions. As their conversation waned into silence with a newfound understanding wrapping around them, she glimpsed the path ahead, diverging into shadows. Could she transform this fear into motivation? The real test loomed as Sarah braced herself for a revelation. What kind of emotional support did she require to navigate through both the healing of her body and the exploration of her latent strengths? Before she could savor the possibilities, a troubling thought gnawed at her. Would any revelation about her talents and ambitions be overshadowed by an even more menacing fear, one that could threaten everything she was trying to rebuild? As days turned into weeks, Sarah's resolve solidified. The pact with Mark served as an anchor amid the turmoil of her emotions, shifting from fear to an unquenchable thirst for self-discovery. She found herself teetering on the edge of a precipice, caught between the familiar confines of her past and the vibrant possibilities awaiting her. Each morning began anew with a ritual that transitioned from mere routine into a rejuvenating practice of intention. She crafted daily affirmations and accompanied them with simple stretches, coaxing her body into participation. Her reflection was no longer a mere reminder of illness, but a canvas ready to be painted with hope. Yet, intriguing complexities arose as she engaged with her ambitions. A notebook became her confidant, filled with sketches of ideas, the stories she yearned to write, the colors she envisioned splashing across blank canvases, and a list of those she might inspire through shared experiences. This process peeled back layers of discontent, revealing elements of her identity that had long been buried beneath the weight of her diagnosis. Conversations with Mark deepened, transitioning from the abstract worries of the past to the raw realities of their present. They embraced vulnerability, discussing the shifts they've both experienced. Sarah began to realize that emotional support wasn't just about acknowledgement of fears. It involved active participation in each other's emotional landscapes. "Do you remember when we hiked that trail last summer?" Mark asked one evening, reflecting on their shared past. "You said, every step is a victory. What if we start applying that to your goals?" Her heart quickened at the idea, the metaphor striking deeply. "One step at a time," she echoed, feeling the gravity of those words ripple within her. In the process of overcoming both physical limitations and self-doubt, she could slowly reclaim her life, her momentum gradually building with each effort. But the shadow of doubt crept alongside ambition. As she delved into her writing, moments of despair would flood her thoughts, whispering notions of inadequacy. The fear of being exposed, of crumbling under the pressure of vulnerability loomed large. What if her writing fell flat? What if the story she longed to share only highlighted how lost she felt? The layered complexity of these fears stirred a familiar turmoil. The professional world was harsh and unforgiving. Publishing was saturated. Countless voices clamored for attention, while hers teetered near silence. With every attempt to write, a unique tension formed. Would she be seen as an inspirational figure or simply another voice blending into the mass? This identity crisis grappled with every keystroke as her desire to create clashed against an ingrained belief that success was a mirage neatly placed beyond her reach. One quiet afternoon, while nursing a cup of chamomile tea, Sarah reflected on her past interactions within her support group. She had often dispensed wisdom on resilience, but lacked the same patience with herself. It dawned on her that confronting her innermost fears could illuminate shadows she had never dared to explore. Steeling herself, she resolved to take the plunge. The next gathering of her online group promised an opportunity not only to share her journey, but to draw strength from their stories in exchange. Perhaps vulnerability was not just a personal battle. It could spawn a shared experience. Perhaps her narrative, impossibly fragile, yet boldly genuine, might find resonance with others. And so, she took the first step, a fragile leap into the unknown. Yet, just as conviction settled in, spontaneity pulled at the seams of her confidence. What if she froze in front of a screen? What if her voice, when finally shared, fell on deaf ears? Her heart raced at the thought, torn between ambition's tug and the anxiety of rejection. As she prepared for the meeting, an almost tangible energy buzzed around her, signaling that she stood on the threshold of significant transformation. As the time drew closer, something unexpected shifted within her. Doubt morphed into anticipatory excitement. For the first time in a long while, stepping into her truth felt less like an act of desperation and more like a bold declaration of self-worth. The virtual room glowed with kindness and empathy at the start of the meeting, yet the question loomed large. Would she confront her fears openly, risking exposure, or retreat into the comfortable anonymity of silence? With every second that passed, the choice grew weightier. What was she willing to sacrifice to reclaim her voice? In that electric moment, the decision loomed, humming with unresolved potential. The screen flickered slightly as Sarah stared into the virtual meeting room, her heart racing. This was the moment she had prepared for, but as participants began to introduce themselves, a blanket of anxiety settled over her. Their faces encouraging, warm did little to dampen the rising tide of worry. What if they saw through her facade? What if vulnerability, instead of connecting her to others, only highlighted her insecurities? When her turn approached, she felt as if time had slowed. Each name that preceded hers was a reminder of the authenticity she yearned for, a reminder of her hidden self, buried beneath layers of self-doubt. With every introduction, she replayed her rehearsed lines in her mind, grappling with the implications. To share openly meant to expose her deepest fears and insecurities, feelings that had often been too heavy to bear alone. As she stumbled through surface pleasantries, struggling to find her voice, Sarah noticed a flash of recognition from one of the attendees, a momentary flicker of understanding. It struck her that they were all fighting varying battles, each carrying scars unseen. What if her words could help another navigate their struggle? The prospect shifted something within her. "Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. I've been learning to embrace my journey after a recent health diagnosis, she managed, and, as she spoke, a tingle of empowerment surged through her. Those words, simple yet profound, anchored her in the moment as she found herself pulled forth into the conversation. As she expanded on her experience, a sense of relief washed over her. The audience listened intently, nodding in acknowledgement. The fear she had felt about revealing her vulnerability began to transform into strength as she shared snippets of her journey, moments of despair interwoven with glimmers of hope. With each sentence, she began to reclaim the narrative of her life, transforming it from a tale of loss to a story of resilience. Mark's voice echoed in her thoughts. Every step is a victory. With this meeting, she realized she had taken one of the most crucial steps yet. Despite the tremors of uncertainty that still rippled through her, she found clarity in vulnerability, an unexpected ally on her path to self-discovery. When the discussion shifted to individual challenges, Sarah volunteered to share more, encouraged by the bonds forming around her. Other participants opened up too, offering their stories, creating an atmosphere charged with empathy and shared experiences. Each revelation eclipsed her fears of inadequacy. With every person that spoke, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease. After an hour of deep-seated sharing, Sarah concluded her thoughts with gratitude. As she listened to others reflect on her words, she marveled at the unexpected connection formed within that virtual space. It was more than just a gathering. It was a collective exploration of courage. As the meeting wound down, Sarah realized she had shifted something fundamental within herself. Yet, as the screen dimmed and faces began to disappear, a familiar apprehension gripped her once more. Would she continue this journey of vulnerability, or would she slip back into a comfortable, yet stagnant silence? The distance between comfort and growth felt immense, each side calling to her like two opposing forces. There was a world of ideas still brewing in her notebook, stories yearning to escape the confines of her mind. What if sharing with this group could evolve into greater pursuits, and perhaps even professional endeavors? This possibility filled her with a heady mixture of excitement and anxiety. Could she really build the courage to transform her insights into creative outputs? What would happen next if she allowed fear to guide her path instead of hinder it? Just then, as if answering her internal turmoil, a notification pinged on her phone. An invitation to submit her work to a budding online publication appeared, offering a platform for emerging voices. A spark of determination ignited within her. The decision lay ahead. Should she take that leap, or let the moment pass like many others before it? In that split second, faced with the potential for both triumph and rejection, she knew she stood at another precipice. The choice was clear, yet daunting, pulling her heart and mind in different directions. Would she dare to leap once more into the vibrant unknown? With a quiet resolve settling like a warm blanket around her, Sarah took a deep breath. The notification echoed in her mind, pulsing with possibility, urging her to act. A voice of firm, undeniable whisper urged her to stop hesitating. The feeling of empowerment from earlier this evening lingered, igniting a desire within her to stretch the boundaries she had set for herself. She glanced at her notebook, filled with sketches of ideas, half-formed stories, and musings waiting for her attention. It was as if her creativity, long stifled by her fears, was aching to break free. This was her chance, a real opportunity to transform vulnerability into impact. The thought electrified her, but doubt flickered at the edges of her enthusiasm. What if she failed? What if her words were not good enough? Yet, amid the chaos of apprehension, another voice gained ground. What if she succeeded? What if her words resonated with others searching for connection? The sheer potential of embracing this challenge propelled her forward. Her fears would not dictate her direction anymore. She sat at her desk, the cursor blinking expectantly on the blank submission form. With a flick of her wrist, she opened a blank document, enabling a channel for her thoughts to flow onto the screen. Armed with her experiences and newfound insight, she sought to capture the delicate equilibrium of pain and hope within her narrative. A story not just about her struggles, but a testament to resilience and growth. The first sentence came easily, flowing like a river bursting from ice. In a year that threatened to shatter me, I found strength in vulnerability. As she typed, words turned into a lifeline, anchoring her to a world far removed from her doubts. Each keystroke represented a deliberate act of defiance against the comfort of silence. An hour passed, and the text slowly crafted itself into a narrative. She wove threads of despair and triumph, creating a tapestry rich with insight and reflection. However, as she neared the end, a familiar tension returned. Her heart raced as self-criticism crept back, whispering doubts that slithered into her mind. What if her perspective was entirely flawed? Why would anyone care about her story? But then she thought of the participants from her meeting, their warm nods, the glimmers of recognition that flickered across their faces in response to her vulnerability. Her story could resonate with someone, guiding them through their jungle of similar fears. This realization ignited a flicker of determination in her chest. As her fingers flew over the keyboard once more, she inserted a quote she held near. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." That was her rallying cry. It summed up where she stood now, at the precipice of transformation. Exhilarated, she took a moment to reread her words and felt an undeniable sense of pride emerge. The piece laid out before her was raw, but it was hers. With a tremulous hand, Sarah approached the final step, hovering over the submit button. This act could be construed as reckless or brave, yet felt monumental. In that instant, the boundaries between fear and strength blurred. She clicked submit, sealing her commitment to herself and her story. It was a daring leap into the unknown, but she knew there was no turning back. As she exhaled, releasing a tension she hadn't realized she'd held, another notification lit up her screen. A calendar invite appeared, reminding her of a follow-up virtual meeting from the group she had connected with earlier. The door to their nurturing conversations was still open, a reminder that she was not alone. The juxtaposition of her recent submission with this reunion stirred a mix of anticipation and anxiety. How would her peers react to her vulnerability transformed into words? Would they see her differently now? The next step loomed ahead, beckoning her to share her journey further. Sarah felt the reins of her narrative tightening, and she realized she would have to face that growing apprehension head-on. This was a world not just of self-exploration, but also of interaction, revealing layers she hadn't fully uncovered yet. Could she navigate the turbulent waters of their reactions while remaining true to the essence of her story? Each tick of the clock echoed in her mind, amplifying the urgency of the moment. The time had come to face the potential fallout of her newfound honesty. Would she embrace this opportunity or retreat to the shadows she had just begun to escape? The virtual meeting loomed on the horizon, an unsteady ship in a storm of self-doubt. Sarah parked herself at her desk, her fingers poised over the keyboard, replaying the moments of vulnerability she had shared just days earlier. The faces of her peers were etched in her mind, open, inquisitive, supportive. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, she grappled with an unsettling mix of apprehension and determination. What would they say about her submission? Was she ready for their feedback, or did her heart still harbor remnants of trepidation? With a deep breath, she pulled up the link to the call, feeling a familiar rush of adrenaline. Suddenly, the screen lit up with familiar smiles and welcoming waves. It warmed her momentarily, but a gnawing insecurity wormed its way back into her thoughts. Would they really understand the depth of her experiences? As the chat box filled with greetings, Sarah couldn't help but notice her own reflection staring back at her, insecure and restless. The host welcomed everyone warmly, pulling her thoughts back to the present. It was time to share. She focused on the question awaiting every member. What has changed for you since you began this journey? When her turn came, Sarah's heart raced. She felt like she was holding a fragile glass, ready to shatter under the weight of expectations. I submitted a piece about my struggles and triumphs. She began, her voice steadier than she felt. It's called in a year that threatened to shatter me. I found strength in vulnerability. Silence enveloped the group. She could see the heads nodding thoughtfully, but their stillness felt tangible, like a thick fog pressing down on her. She pressed on, recounting the transformative power of vulnerability, how opening up had felt like unwrapping a tightly wound gift. When she finished, a silence hung in the air before the host smiled and encouraged feedback. Slowly, voices began to emerge from the ether. "That was brave, Sarah," one person said, her tone warm and sincere. Your perspective on resilience versus fear really resonated with me. I've been struggling with sharing my own story. Another chimed in, I've often thought that my experiences wouldn't connect with others, but hearing yours makes me rethink that. Encouragement flooded the space, wrapping around Sarah like a knitted shawl. She felt the tension slowly melt, but alongside it, another emotion emerged, in acute awareness of their shared vulnerabilities. This was more than just a meeting. It was a tapestry of stories and struggles interwoven, yet distinct. As the discussion deepened, Sarah found herself articulating insights she hadn't considered before. She connected her narrative to others, amplifying the experience of shared human emotion in a way that sparked recognition. The dialogue became revitalizing, each exchange tugged at her heartstrings, fostering a collaborative understanding. But just as the meeting began to shift towards its close, a thought struck her. She hadn't yet revealed the heart of her narrative, the crucial decision she made to confront her fears. She hadn't fully acknowledged her battle against the fear of judgment that had long held her captive. Channeling her growing courage, she spoke again. I realized through writing that every story matters, including mine. I chose to submit my piece, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And I think acknowledging our flaws is essential in finding strength. Silence fell once more, but this time it felt pregnant with thought, a collective pondering. For a heartbeat, she worried that perhaps she had overstepped a boundary. However, as others shared their own revelations, she welcomed the palpable shift, the idea that imperfection could be power, that vulnerability was a powerful connector. When the meeting drew to a close, an undercurrent of gratitude surged through her. She hadn't just found solidarity. She had begun to carve out her professional identity, allowing her voice to pierce through the noise of uncertainty. Yet, as she disconnected, the realization that she would need to continue sharing her journey loomed ahead, like a road leading into an uncharted territory. What momentous revelation might follow from her willingness to go deeper into her narrative? What new layers would emerge as she continued to break down the walls that had once confined her? The unfolding journey stretched before her like a vast landscape, waiting for exploration. Sarah sat in front of her computer, the screensaver reflecting her palpitating heart as she processed the echoes of the meeting. Every encouraging comment from her peers ricocheted through her mind, but doubt persisted at the edges. The fine line between vulnerability and exposure felt precarious, and her inner critic resumed its relentless dialogue. But she had chosen to embrace the risk, and a flicker of determination began to spread. Instead of closing her laptop and retreating to a state of indecision, Sarah decided to dig deeper. She opened a blank document and compelled herself to write. The words flowed as an instinctive reaction to the connections she had experienced. Using her previous submission as a springboard, she began crafting new thoughts, infused with a raw honesty that felt cathartic. But as her fingers danced over the keyboard, a realization struck. She had only touched the surface of what she wanted to say about judgment, particularly the weight of others' opinions, a burden she carried heavily. Wasn't it time to confront not only the fear of external judgment, but also the internalized narrative that dictated her self-worth? She paused, staring at the northern skyline outside her window and questioning her understanding of vulnerability. To delve deeper into her fears, she would need to confront another uncomfortable truth. The status quo of her past was interconnected with societal expectations. The need for validation had often overshadowed her own desires, shackling her to conformity rather than authenticity. Fueled by a new sense of purpose, she began drafting an outline for her next piece, titled The Fear Behind the Facade. It needed a more profound examination of influence, how external voices could stifle internal truths. Her experiences weighed on her, shadowed by the fear that sharing them would invite unwanted scrutiny once more. But the very act of deciding to write became an act of rebellion, a way to reclaim parts of herself she had hidden away. Yet, deep down, Sarah wrestled with her convictions. Was it enough to merely reflect on her fears, or should she also take steps to dismantle these ingrained beliefs? A nagging question lingered. What if confronting these truths led to backlash? The society around her often valued perfection over authenticity, and she knew all too well the cost of straying from accepted norms. The tension of potential rejection churned at her gut. In that moment of introspection, an unusual clarity emerged. The price of silence had become heavier than the fear of judgment. She needed to assert her voice, not just for herself, but for others who shared similar struggles. The act of sharing raw, unedited vulnerability transcended personal insight. It held the potential to inspire others to embrace their fears, too. Perhaps in facing her doubts, she could light a path for someone still trapped in silence. Her heartbeat quickened with a mixture of fear and exhilaration as she made a decision. She would submit this next piece not merely for feedback, but as a challenge to herself and to those who might read it. With each keystroke, Sarah steered herself closer to the woman she aspired to be, a beacon of authenticity amidst the noise of societal expectation. Just as she wrapped up the draft, preparing to step into this new, uncertain territory, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from one of the peers who had spoken up during their meeting. They wanted to meet one-on-one to talk about vulnerability and the power of storytelling. A wave of anticipation washed over her, tinged with apprehension. What depths might this conversation uncover? Could it lead her to an unexpected alliance or further challenge her resolve? As thoughts tumbled through her mind, Sarah felt the unfolding journey reach a pivotal moment. The next chapter awaited, filled with potential revelations and a chance to further define her identity within this tapestry of shared experiences. As she sat her chair, fingers poised over the keyboard, Sarah felt the weight of expectation heavy on her shoulders. The email from her peer lingered in her mind, its implications both exciting and terrifying. What would they discuss? The thought of opening up further, of letting someone into her world of vulnerabilities, sparked both fear and anticipation. The next day, she found herself pacing in front of the cafe where they planned to meet. The aroma of fresh coffee wafted through the door, mixing with the autumn air, and each whiff stirred her nerves. What would they see when she revealed her truth? Would they validate her struggle or regard it with skepticism? When Mark arrived, his presence was warm and inviting. He smiled brightly as he approached, a stark contrast to the inner turmoil that consumed her. Sarah took a breath before initiating the conversation, hoping that the deep, honest dialogue about vulnerability would guide her toward greater self-awareness. As they discussed their experiences, she felt a growing connection, each shared story peeling back layers of her insecurities. Mark recounted his own battles with societal expectations, detailing how this burden had shaped his perspective. Their conversation shifted quickly from light anecdotes to a more profound exploration of emotional safety. Have you ever felt like your internal narrative is your worst critic? He posed. Sarah nodded vigorously, her heart racing at the clarity of his words. It wasn't just her fears that held her back. It was the relentless self-judgment that twisted her sense of identity. So much of what we think is rooted in external validation, he continued, but the moment we own our stories, that's where the power lies. His eyes sparkled with conviction, something within them igniting a flicker of hope in her heart. His perspective struck a chord deep within her. Sarah began to see that her previous battle was not merely to address self-doubt, but to elevate her own narrative. If she were to genuinely connect with others, she needed to acknowledge the power of her story and the courage that came with sharing it. The conversation flowed, filled with shared laughter and insights, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of liberation. The fear of judgment began to dissolve, replaced by the realization that her vulnerability could resonate deeply with others. She was not alone in her struggles, nor was she the first to face this wall of external and internal expectations. Mark's encouragement worked like a balm. Each word reaffirmed her quest for authenticity. As the meeting wound down and they exchanged goodbyes, Sarah felt an unexpected shiver of excitement. She was ready to dig deeper into her journey and push the boundaries of her comfort zone even further. On her way back home, her mind buzzed with new ideas about how to infuse her writing with this newfound clarity. What if she added personal anecdotes that reached beyond her own vulnerability, perhaps linking it to broader themes of societal expectations? The thought excited her. Arriving home, she opened her laptop, eager to explore this next phase of her development. But just as she began typing, another email notification caught her attention, this one from her editor. Her heart sank at the sight of the subject line, "Concerns about your submission." What could they possibly have to say? The excitement that had grown within her a moment before turned into a tight knot in her stomach. Was the journey she just embraced beginning to unravel, or was it simply another challenge to rise above? Determined to confront whatever awaited her, she clicked open the email, knowing it could redefine her understanding of vulnerability and resilience in ways she had yet to grasp. The moment of truth was drawing near. The email's content was a flurry of mixed signals, outlining the editorial team's appreciation for Sarah's raw honesty, but also voicing concerns about the depth of her narrative. They admired her courage, yet urged her to delve deeper into the intricacies of her battles with identity and societal expectations. Instead of offering a straightforward acceptance, they posed questions that dissected her work, challenging her to expand upon her emotions and stimuli. For a moment, a wave of disappointment crashed over Sarah. The initial excitement about her submission flickered ominously, threatening to pull her back into the shadows of self-doubt. Was her writing inadequate? Had she not communicated her struggles with enough clarity? Each concern felt like an echo of all her internal fears. But that nagging voice inside her, the one that had nudged her to embrace vulnerability, reminded her of the journey she had undertaken. This was not just about acceptance or rejection. It was about growth and exploration. The editor's concerns offered her a crucial opportunity to strengthen her narrative, to shift from merely recounting her experiences to weaving them into something more profound and relatable. With a newfound resolve, Sarah sat down once again and read the email carefully. She took notes on the feedback, recognizing an invitation for introspection rather than criticism. Reflecting on her initial discomfort, she realized that true growth often lay beyond her comfort zone. This was her moment to transform doubt into determination. The next few days became a whirlwind of creativity, fueled by the insights she gleaned from the editor's commentary. She restructured her piece, digging into the rawness of emotions she had skirted around. Memories surfaced with clarity, moments of despair, as well as sparks of defiance. Through the gentle whir of her laptop, new sentences emerged, encapsulating the delicate balance between strength and vulnerability. Importantly, she connected her personal journey to broader societal questions about identity and acceptance. She wove in discussions about the pressures to conform, the seductive allure of perfection, and the personal liberation that came from embracing the imperfect self. Sarah began to see that her narrative wasn't simply about lamentation or resilience. It was an anthem of authenticity that could resonate with many open hearts. In the process, something fundamental shifted within her. The act of rewriting her submission transformed into a place of catharsis where her past and potential intertwined seamlessly. The internalized judgment that once governed her writing shattered, replaced by an empowering mantra: her story mattered, flaws and all. Just as she finalized the revised draft, another idea struck her. What if she shared her journey of reworking the narrative with her support group? This could ultimately inspire others to not only embrace their voices, but also engage with the editing process of their own narratives, whether internal, personal, or professional. Emboldened, she arranged a dedicated session within her online support group to discuss the journey of crafting a story highlighting both the joys and challenges that came with vulnerability in writing. As she prepared the materials, exhilaration coursed through her. This opportunity to lead and impact others was a tangible representation of her growth, an affirmation that she had indeed transformed her pain into purpose. When the day of the session arrived, Sarah felt an electric mix of nerves and anticipation. As she connected with her peers, she noticed familiar faces lighting up in anticipation. She shared her own experience, opening with the recent editorial feedback and how it had pushed her boundaries. The group listened intently, nodding as she described her journey from disappointment to enlightenment. As the discussion unfolded, the room buzzed with energy. Each member began to share their own stories, revealing fears and vulnerability akin to her own. Together, they unveiled raw truths, discussing strategies to face external judgment and internal criticism, crafting their narratives and embracing their voices with renewed confidence. Returning home that evening, Sarah reflected on the sheer power of shared experiences. The collective exchange had rekindled a sense of purpose and belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. She had transformed from being merely a participant to a leader, further solidifying her own identity in the process. Finally, with her revised submission ready, Sarah pressed send. This time, the act felt expansive, a declaration of her commitment to authenticity. She had not only confronted her fears, but also nurtured a supportive environment for others to explore their truths alongside her. Weeks later, an email notification broke the stillness of her day, a response from the editorial team. With her heart pounding, she opened the update, revealing the news she had been yearning for. Her submission had been accepted, with revisions lauded as enriching and powerful. In that moment, Sarah felt weightless, as if the bridges she had crossed led back into brighter, more agreeable landscapes. It was not merely a victory. It was a culmination of growth, resilience, and a burgeoning sense of self that had finally come to fruition. She understood in every fiber of her being that becoming her true self was a journey far from complete, but she now stood on solid ground, embracing the dynamic path ahead. Sarah smiled, proud of how far she had come. And with that exhilaration, she resolved to continue sharing and growing both within and beyond the narratives of her life. Her voice, once tentative, now rang with clarity and confidence, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. In her heart, a new mantra blossomed. Her journey was valid, her story was impactful, and her growth was limitless. So seize this moment to champion your story, inspire resilience in your journey, and unearth the powerful narrative within you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.